Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. My name's Josh and I'm from Spray Direct, and today we're going to be talking to you about how to use the Wagner 5000 FinishControl XVLP unit. So I'll be giving you a quick demonstration and talk you through how we set it up. So this 5000 is the larger of the two XVLP units we supply. So we also do the 3500, which is the handheld version of this. So you've got the turbine on the back of the gun here, and you haven't got the air hose feeding air from a remote turbine. So we've already made a video on both those units before. So the 3500 was sort of an unboxing style and a demonstration, whereas the video on the 5000 was just an unboxing. So there'll be a link at the end of this video so you can go check those out. In the other video we made, I run you through all the sort of specs and design features of this unit, so I won't go through it all again now, it's just sort of a demonstration video. But just to give you a quick run through, this unit comes in at 8 kilos, so it's nice and lightweight, nice and portable. Also, it's got a cool sort of twist off front end design, so you can go from your fine spray attachment over to the standard spray, and they can be obviously filled with different materials and super easy to swap out. And when you buy this unit from us, you get two of the front end attachments. So we've got the standard spray one, which I've just put on here. That's going to be used for spraying sort of like walls and ceilings, stuff like that, where you've got larger areas to cover. It comes with a 4.1mm slot shaped nozzle. And then you've got the other one that it comes with as well, which is the fine spray attachment, which is 1.8mm and is going to be used for spraying things like skirting boards, architraves, spindles, just your fine finish stuff. There is another spray attachment as well called the wall spray attachment, which is very similar to the standard spray one we've got here, but instead of the 1 litre stainless steel cup we've got on the bottom there, it comes with a 1.4 litre plastic cup, so better if you're doing larger volumes and don't want to be refilling often. When setting up these units, you've got loads of control, really nice and easy to use. So you've got the fan control here, so you can adjust how wide your fan control is. This is the same for both units. You can adjust from whether you go for a vertical spray pattern or if you want to go horizontal. You've also got a control so you can control the amount of fluid you've got coming out and how much air you've got coming out with the turbine control. The unit also has a really cool feature, and anyone who's ever used an HVLP or XVLP unit before knows that they can be a little bit noisy. So what you've got here is a two-stage trigger. So the first pull of the trigger that we've got there will start the turbine up and get the air moving, and then the second pull of the trigger will release the material. So what that means is every time we're not pulling the trigger at all, the unit will turn itself off, which is handy because, as I say, they can be a bit noisy. One thing I would say with that though is when you're spraying, you do want to pull the trigger to that first stage first and let the air start coming out before you depress the trigger completely and start the flow of material. Otherwise what you'll find is if you open it up all the way to start with, you won't have that initial flow of air, and the first bit of material that comes out will come out in the form of a spit and won't look good. As with any spray machine, getting a good finish is all in the setup. So what you'll find is it's really important that the relationship you have between the amount of material you've got coming out and the amount of air you've got coming out, it's important to have those balanced. So what you don't want is to have fluid set all the way open, so you've got as much fluid coming out as you can, and turn your air control all the way down so that you've just got loads of material coming out and no air to atomize it. So what you'll find there is you'll have really big particle sizes and it'll be a really bobbly, horrible finish. But vice versa, you don't want to have no material coming out or very little material coming out and loads of air, because then you'll just have a really dry and dusty finish that will have very little paint on and it will take you forever. Last thing I want to quickly run through before we have a play with this machine is the importance of not tipping the gun back past the 45-degree point, because what you can find is the material from the cup can backtrack into the gun and into the hose. Not so much of a problem with the 5000 because it's not really going to go into the turbine and cause any major issues. But with the 3500, which has the turbine built into the back of it, you really want to avoid that because you could damage the turbine. Right, okay, so now we've run through the basic details, we're ready to see this thing in action and have a play with it. But what I would say is, if you wanted to find out any more detail, like I said earlier, just watch the video that will be in the link in the description below or at the end of this video. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is use the standard spray attachment, and this is just with a ordinary trade emulsion. And I'm going to set it up and balance the air and fluid ratios so we can see the difference and what sort of effect that has. So for the initial test, what we're going to do is have the fan pattern wide open and start with the material on number 1, so as low as it goes, and have the turbine on number 1 as well, and just see what happens. Okay, so nothing's coming out at all, so we need to open our fluid control. So if we set that to number 4. So I don't know if you can see that, but we've got a very small amount of paint coming out, really large particle size, barely atomised at all. So what we're going to need to do, open up the fluid control even more, so we're going to go up to 7 and turn up our air control to say about 4, and we'll give that another try. Okay, so we've started to get a lot more coming out now. Still want a bit more material. If we're using the standard spray attachment, we're going to want to be spraying a bit faster than that. Fine finish isn't sort of what we're after here, we're just after a bit more coverage. So if we open it up to say 10, and then turn up our air control to 7, we'll give that another try. So first pull of the trigger to start the turbine up, otherwise you'll find you get loads of spits. And then once we're up to speed, you can then pull the trigger completely and start the flow of material. Okay, so we've got a lot more coming out now, but what you can probably see at the top and the bottom there is a really sort of large particle size again, a bit spitty, so I think the amount of paint we've got coming out there, the amount of material we've got coming out is about right, but we want to increase the amount of air we've got to atomise it. So we've got 10 on the amount of material we've got coming out, and we're going to increase the air to 9. So I think that's pretty good there. So we've got nicely atomised material. If that was going onto something like a wall or a ceiling, I don't think you'd have too many complaints about that level of finish. So next what we'll do is show you what we do when we reduce the fan pattern. Now we've got the air to fluid ratio balanced with that wide fan control. Let's now see what happens when we reduce it down to the narrow fan pattern. So we'll do the wide to start with, so you can see. You can see really wide fan pattern. Now let's reduce it down. And as you can see straight away, I've got way too much material in the middle here. So we need to reduce that down. So we need to balance it again, depending on how wide we have the fan pattern. So we definitely want to reduce the amount of fluid we've got. So let's take that down to say 7. And then we want to reduce the air as well because we haven't got as much paint coming out. So let's put that at 6. So let's give that another try. Okay, so that's pretty good now. So you can see we haven't got a real heavy build up in the middle like we did on this one. So the learning to take from that is just be conscious of having the setup balanced. You've got the right fluid and the right amount of air for the width of your fan pattern. So you don't have to go full narrow or full wide, you can go anywhere in between. So before you spray onto whatever it is you're spraying, make sure you've got it balanced for the width that you're spraying at. Next up, I wanted to show you the importance of half pulling the trigger to start with, to start the flow of air, so we can get the turbine going and get it up to speed, and then we can introduce our product. So this is a question we've had a couple of times before with customers on the phone saying, just bought a new machine, and what I find is when I first pull the trigger, I get a really big spit, and then after that, it's absolutely fine and as I'd expect. So I'm going to show you the effect of what that does and how we fix it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to show you how you should do it. So you have to press the trigger to start the flow of air and get the turbine up to speed. And then once it is, you can kind of tell when you're listening to it. Once it's up to speed, you can then pull the trigger completely and start the flow of material. So half a pull. And now fully. And now if we don't do that, if we just pull the trigger all the way, you can see there, pretty horrific. So what we've done, we've got a pressurised cup full of air from when we've last pulled the trigger. So that wants to come out, and the only thing stopping it coming out is the needle shutting off and stopping the flow of material. Then what we've got, as soon as we pull the trigger, we're releasing that, and we've only got the pressure in the cup to try and get that material out, and we've not got any air to atomise it. So as you can see, pretty horrific spray pattern here. You certainly wouldn't want that on your wall. Loads of spits, huge particle size, and a massive run straight down the middle, and then from then on, absolutely fine. So half pull the trigger, up to speed. and we get a nice fan pattern. So easy as that, just pull the trigger for a second or so to get the turbine up to speed, then you're ready to pull the trigger completely and get spraying. So now we've talked through how to set it up and how to get the fan pattern we're after, I'll give you a quick demonstration. Pretend this is a wall and I'll show you how quick we can spray it. So as you can see with the standard spray attachment, you can cover some pretty large areas very fast. It's not quite as fast as airless, but you've got a lot of control, and this sort of tool you can use for lots of other things. It's not meant for just blasting out huge areas all day, every day. If my job was 90% mist coating, I'd go for an airless unit and not an XVLP or HVLP unit. But if it's something you get asked to do periodically and you've got the odd room to do here and there, perfectly capable of doing it with this machine. Next up, we're going to use the fine spray attachment, and one of my favourite features of the XVLP range is the twist off front ends. So you can literally take the front end off. We're not going to bother cleaning that for now, we're going to put it down, grab our fine spray attachment which we've preloaded with paint, simple as that, put it on and we're ready to spray, obviously once we've set it up and balanced it, but let's get this to work and see how we go on. Okay, so with the fine spray attachment we're going to set it up in exactly the same way. So we've got it on the wide fan pattern, so that's narrow, that's wide. And we've got it in the vertical fan pattern position, but easy as that to go to horizontal if we wanted to. But for this example, we'll go vertical on the wide fan pattern. So we've turned our material down, turned our airflow down, and we're going to slowly bring it in until we get the sort of finish we're after. So I'm going to start at 4 and 4, so we get a sort of baseline. Need more material, so we're going to go 6 and 6. So as you can see, we've got very little coming out here, so we need even more material again. So let's go 9 and 9. Okay, so we're starting to get a decent amount of material out now, so we can adjust that as we like. So I want a little bit more material coming out, I want to be spraying a little bit faster. So I'm going to go 11, and then I'm going to turn the turbine all the way up to 10. So as you can see, it's much slower than the standard spray attachment, but we've got a much finer finish here. We've got a lot more control. So if you're doing things like doors or windows or furniture, you've got loads of control. You're not using loads of paint at all. You've not got loads of overspray, and you can do it at whatever pace you feel comfortable with. And obviously, you can take into account how much you want to mask up. If you were doing airless, you'd have to mask up a lot more than you would with this, because you're going an awful lot slower, but you've got a lot more control as well. Okay, so next up we're going to try the narrow fan pattern. So we're going to reduce that down. And if we go again, what we'll probably find is we get a real heavy build-up of material because we haven't adjusted anything. Okay, so we've got a lot more paint build-up in the middle here. It's not quite as severe as it was with the standard, but I can certainly see that's too heavy for whatever it is I'm spraying. So let's reduce down the fluid flow. So I'm going to drop that down to 9. I'm going to drop the air down to 9 as well, so we'll give that a quick try. Okay, so that's a bit more what I'm looking for. We've got a nice even fan pattern all the way through. Not quite as much excess paint around the edges where we haven't got it fully atomized. It's nice and controllable. That'll be good for if you're doing something like window frames where you've masked up obviously all the glass and the majority of what you're spraying is actually masked up, and we've just got a narrow bit to spray. So this way, having it with the fine spray attachment nice and narrow, you're not wasting loads of paint and you're not having to mask up too much. So now we're going to be spraying this window frame with our fine spray attachment. So I'm going to have the fan pattern fairly narrow for this one. We don't want to be wasting loads of paint firing through the holes here or what would otherwise be masked. We want to keep it nice and controlled, not wasting loads of paint and firing it through the holes. So let's give this a go. So as you can see, we've got a nice coat of paint on there. There wasn't loads and loads of overspray. Obviously, haven't gone around and done all the sides. This is just a sort of an example for you. But if you're in a sensitive environment and you don't want to be doing loads and loads of masking up, you don't want to mask up everything in the entire room, and you've just got to spray in a confined area, this is a really nice system to give you that sort of level of control. So next up, we're going to be using the fine spray attachment, but on a larger item. So let's give that a go. Okay, so now we're going to be using the fine spray attachment on this door. So we've got the fan setting on its widest setting. We've got the most amount of paint coming out with the most amount of air. So this is the sort of speed you can go at with the fine spray attachment. So that's what you can do with a fine spray attachment. So you can go from really thin, narrow objects like stair spindles or window frames like we did, or you can go to something nice and wide like we've got this door, or maybe a cabinet, something like that. Obviously with the larger items, and you've got the fan control open, wide open, you've got the maximum amount of air, the maximum amount of fluid, there's always going to be a bit more overspray, but it's still nice and controlled. You can keep it in a relatively confined area, and you also get a great finish. Next up, I'm going to do something that would be normally considered criminal. So I'm going to spin this door round And we're going to spray the other side with the standard spray attachment with emulsion, just so we can see the contrast in speed. Obviously, this isn't a precious door, but it's all for science, so why not? So we'll put on the the standard spray attachment, and we'll spray it as quick as we can and compare the finish. Well, that was a lot more paint coming out. It was quite unpleasant to spray with, to be honest. It was a lot more paint than I could sort of comfortably manage. There was certainly a lot more overspray going off around the edges, a lot harder to control than it was with the fine spray attachment. I think realistically, if you're doing things like doors, you want to be using the fine spray attachment where you've got a lot of control. Unless you're doing loads of them and you've got them all lined up and you're in a spray booth and you can have extraction on. I didn't actually have the extraction on, just so you get an idea of the overspray. We're not just drawing it away straight away. In terms of the actual finish, I can see it's a lot heavier and definitely not as smooth or as fine. The particles aren't broken up as much as the other side as we've got here. There's a lot more paint on the other side, but that side is definitely a much better finish. You'll have also probably noticed that when we're spraying, I'm coming along and keeping the trigger fully depressed and the material's coming out even when I go back and forth. That's just to keep the turbine spinning. Obviously it is a two-stage trigger, but what you can find is if you let go and it goes to the second stage and stops the turbine spinning, when you then go to pull the trigger again and start again, you'll find you get that big spit that I showed you earlier, which obviously we don't want. So the lesser of two evils is to keep it spinning and come off the side. So that we don't build up twice as much material on the edges here, I'm actually coming completely off the side of the door, coming down a little bit and joining back in again. Because if I were to stop on the edge of the door, you would get twice as much material in that section there. Okay, so that pretty much covers everything you need to know with the Wagner FinishControl 5000. So we've gone through really wide fan patterns, really fast spraying with the standard spray attachment for things like walls and ceilings. And then we've got the fine finish attachment where you can do things like stair spindles and the window frame we did earlier. Obviously, if you've liked the video and found it helpful, then please hit the thumbs up icon. And if you wanted to find out more and get access to exclusive offers, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.